You're watching Console Conversations.
Hello everybody, it is me, Walter the Germany Ball, here with the Halloween special of Console Conversations Season 3. So, you might be wondering, what are you doing for a Halloween special episode? I've never done a Halloween special episode of Console Conversations before because, well, I've never been filming Console Conversations during Halloween, but what possibly could I do as a gaming podcast topic that's so unbelievably horrifying? What a ridiculous question. Obviously, rank all the Xbox consoles. Duh. I'm so out of touch with the Xbox brand that this is gonna be pretty hilarious and scary to anybody who's not. So let's go into the first one, which is the Xbox Original. The Xbox Original is a very, very good console, actually. To be honest, it was at a time when every console was offering up a different experience. The GameCube was offering up very original and unique experiences for platformer and horror fans especially, while the PlayStation 2 was offering epic adventure games and beat 'em ups, while the Xbox was offering some of the best shooters out there. So the original Xbox was actually a competitor for once. It put them on the map because they were putting out strong exclusive titles. They weren't just putting out, oh, a Battletoads remake, that's fine. Oh, a couple mediocre titles like they are now. No, every single game they were putting out there was really high quality and fun. You had Halo, you had Jade Empire, you had Riddick, you had Steel Battalion, you had Mech Assault, you had Whack, you had Blinks, you had Voodoo Vince. So you had a large variety, and you had some very heavily impactful titles like Halo, and the online was very much ahead of its time as well. It was doing it better than anybody else, even though you did have to pay. It was pushing the industry forward with a brand new feature, which was online play. It couldn't play DVDs without an accessory, but still, that's a very large benefit. I think, though, the reason it failed to outsell the PlayStation 2 was everybody knew what a PlayStation 1 was. Nobody really knew what an Xbox was. So brand recognition was probably the biggest factor in its lackluster sales. However, it somehow outsold the GameCube, which is pretty impressive since Nintendo, is like over 100 years old as a company. But overall, the first console was a pretty big knockout and a large success for the time. But then we have the Xbox 360, which in my opinion is one of the most overrated consoles of all time. To those who like the console, great, good on you, but I don't. I just do not like that system one bit, and the reason is because I feel that it got heavily overrated and was beloved so much just because the price of the PS3 was outrageous, which is inexcusable. They should not have crammed so much useless garbage into the PlayStation 3 to make it the price skyrocket, because they had a hubris that led them to believe, oh, if it has PlayStation as the name, people will buy it in hundreds of millions of units. We win! But that did not end up happening. Instead, they ended up selling, around 85, which beat the Xbox 360, but only because they somehow turned around the console's dead on arrival fate very, very quickly and well. But yeah, the Xbox 360 only, in my opinion, got much attention because Halo 3, Gears of War, and the fact that the Wii was appealing to the casual market, so most people who wanted a more mainstream gaming experience didn't want to play that, and the PS3 was so outrageously priced and didn't have enough compelling games until around 2009 that nobody wanted to buy it. So the Xbox 360, it makes sense why it did get so much attention, but I don't really get why it's so beloved today. The Xbox backwards compatibility was abysmal and barely functions most of the time, and that's only considering the games that it actually plays, which were pretty small library to be quite honest. And not to mention the controller, in my opinion, compared to modern controllers and the PlayStation 3's, is pretty mediocre. Although I do have to give it props because it's a pretty fair controller for the time. The user interface is pretty bad. The online was done the worst, even though it was the only one you had to pay for. And if you look at the library of exclusives, it's disappointingly tiny. I mean, you have Fable 2 and 3. Alright, solid. Gears of War. 4 Gears of War games, which is a bit much, but at least 3 of them I hear are really good. And I played the first one and it's really good. Halo 3, which is, I mean, I personally way prefer Reach and 1, but it's still a solid game. But other than that, it had like Forza. I mean, that's it. And Castle Crashers and Battle Block Theater. Those are probably the strongest titles it had, and it had those rare games, but that's just a cheap buyout that they didn't actually work hard to get those exclusives made for themselves. They just stole them from Nintendo. So honestly, it's pretty disappointing because they were doing a pretty solid job in the first half and then just gave up with the Kinect. They put out nothing at all, and tried becoming like the Wii. But they're not able to capture the magic of the Wii or the fun of the Wii. They just seem like a cheap knockoff in comparison. If you play a Kinect, yeah, you'll have a fun time, but it feels like a cheap theme park ride. But with the Wii, you feel like you're going into the future. You're experiencing, like, it's like comparing, I don't know, some cheap theme park to Disneyland. It doesn't have the same whimsicality or quality as the Wii did, and overall it fell flat. I mean, the PS3, like if you look at it, like I said before, it had Resistance, Killzone, Infamous, it had Uncharted, The Last of Us, it had Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, it had Puppeteer, it had Fat Princess. I mean, it had so many great exclusive games you could not get anywhere else. And the Xbox coasted by on Halo, Gears of War, and some mediocre third-party games. It wasn't a very good console retroactively. It could have been, but they gave up in the second half, and overall, looking back on it, not a very compelling console. So, it was still a nice console at the time. Compared to the competition, it was a good choice. But compared to what the PS3 became and what the Wii can be if you open up your mind, it's not really all too great, at least in my opinion. But then we have the Xbox One, which is the physical definition of not too great. I do have to give it props because they tried doing better things. Now, pay $1 for 3 months of Game Pass and get every game you want on the Xbox. That's pretty pro-consumer and cool. Play every good Xbox and Xbox 360 games, and even ones that aren't good. That's pretty pro-consumer and awesome. They are doing a lot of cool stuff with it, but look at the library. Now look at the Windows Store. How many of those games on the Xbox One are not on computers? And I get that people claim it's the ecosystem of it all. But if you're able to have a computer that runs Windows and not have to actually have an Xbox console to play those exclusive quote-unquote games, then what's the point of the Xbox brand existing other than to get another system in the home? They really taken this approach, and I really do not agree with it. I think PlayStation and Nintendo have it right, because when you look at a console, why would you buy it if you can get all those experiences somewhere else? When you can do everything you want to do there on something that's cheaper and that has original experiences you can't get anywhere else by itself. The Xbox brand doesn't make much sense to people who actually understand the concept of exclusive games. And Xbox One, yeah, the only games that aren't on PC that it has that are exclusive to the Xbox One are Halo 5 and one Forza game. And let me just say, when a new Forza game comes out, it replaces all the old ones, which, that's not too bad. It's an annual franchise, I don't care. And then Halo 5, which is the worst Halo game out there that most people hate. So, those are your two titles. Those are the two reasons to buy an Xbox One. Want to buy one yet? Yeah, no. I get that it's a nice console with a great controller and some cool experiences and very easy to get games, but when you could go and get a PlayStation 4 for cheaper or get a Nintendo Switch for way cheaper, it just doesn't make sense because those offer up almost all the experiences the Xbox does and their own that are only on there. Every Xbox game that's only on Xbox and PC, if it was an exclusive to the Xbox, it could not nearly compete with the likes of Nintendo and Sony. So the Xbox One overall is a disappointingly bad console that has no purpose and no real compelling games. So, it's time to rank them. Of course, I'm an Xbox moron. I owned an Xbox 360 way after it came out just to play a couple of rare games and Castle Crashers. Other than that, I barely know anything, but I do really like the original Xbox because I played some of the games and I love them. So, how would I rank them? It seems pretty obvious because of the way I talked in this video, but I'm going to have to say the Xbox 360, and then the Xbox One. Because overall, they just kept getting worse with their lineups and libraries. Although, if we're considering backward compatibility, I would say the Xbox One, Xbox Original, and Xbox 360. But overall, that's how I would rank them, and thank you guys so much for watching this Halloween special of Console Conversations. Tell me how you would rank those 3 Xbox consoles below. I'd love to hear it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and if you want to see more content like this. And be safe, everybody. I'm Walter the Germany Ball, and goodbye.